What is the most severe case of someone being completely out of touch with reality you've ever seen? I was at a bar and some guy was giving an impromptu lecture of why millennials are so broke, and blamed it all on us being lazy students who don't want to work and go to school. When asked what he did, he was a property owner, and owned a few apartment buildings. Then someone chimes up with the fact he doesn't own any properties, he manages them for his uncle who pays him to do nothing all day. My friend stole my card information, and bought loads of expensive stuff. I asked her if it was her before reporting it, knowing that she was going through a tough time and I wanted to give her a chance to make it right and be that I could be in trouble for conspiracy to fraud if I reported it, and they believed I'd got stuff delivered to my friend to claim fraud for the money back. She said no. I thought someone else had done it, so I reported it. When she got arrested, she said she didn't think they'd take the fraud thing so far. She thought you could just call up banks to get the money back, and they wouldn't investigate. I'm fairly convinced that my current shift supervisor thinks anyone who works an overtime shift is doing it out of loyalty to the company, and not because of the 1.5x pay rate. Had a friend who insisted she was in a relationship with a C-list celebrity, whom she met once during a comic convention. All the celebrity's Instagram and Twitter posts were for her and everything had a meaning behind it. When the celebrity got married, she said that it was just for the media, so she and celebrity could live a quiet life. When he didn't do anything for her birthday, she had a breakdown. She went to therapy not long after. My cousin was spoiled and sheltered her entire childhood through college. Then her parents stupidly cut the leash without any preparation, and released her into society. She quickly got in trouble for bouncing checks all over town. My mom picked her up, and asked why the hell she was writing bad checks everywhere. Turns out my cousin was under the impression that, as long as you had checks in your checkbook, you had money in your account. She didn't understand that you deposit in a number and then can spend or withdraw up to that amount. Please teach your kids basic finance. Note: this was like 1996, before it turns into a who writes a check anymore discussion. This was from a regional manager of Starbucks. After they removed merit-based raises that could go up to a 5% increase, changed to a flat 2% increase. When she asked if people liked the new raise plan, I said actually no. They feel unmotivated with no reason to perform any better than just normal. Regional manager, your staff need to realize working isn't about money. One bully of a boss asking the 3 people who suffered most from his behavior if they would want to move to a new employer with him as a team. HMM. How about no way in hell? I have an aunt who's never really worked a day in her life, because her husband created his own business early on in life. They live in a McMansion, and I was over once, and we got to talking about fitness. And she told me, oh yeah, we send Pamela to this special training gym. It's only $200 a week. You should try it. The fact that to her it was only $200 really kills me. I made $9.95 an hour at the time. She's nice enough, but not in touch with reality at all. I knew someone who unironically tried to convey that not only is Pokemon demonic, but they exist in real life and there are reported cases of them attacking and harming people. My stepfather's grandpa suffered from psychosis in a strange way. He wasn't able to distinguish mirror reflections from real life. He would often be found talking to the mirrors, his reflection, for hours. Later on, he wasn't allowed to have any mirrors, because he would believe that that man was there to kill him, and often would turn violent. Turn violent as in he would start punching and clawing against the mirrors. I knew a girl who cheated on her boyfriend. When he found out, he broke up with her. She said, "You can't break up with me. It has to be mutual." A woman I knew a few years ago. She had a job. She was convinced she was supposed to be a movie star. She never did any acting, though. She also told me about the married man that she had slept with. He loves me, but he can't leave his wife. She actually did stop having sex with him, but they still hung out. My boss's wife, 28. She grew up in a wealthy family and married to a man who was third generation owning the company he was in. They were a regional power, etc. She was talking to a staff that in general made $36K a year, mumbling about a staffer who was on his honeymoon. Tennessee. Tennessee. She looked around the room for everyone to join in. My god. How did she agree to that? We did Hawaii and that was least I told him was acceptable. My sister grew up with everything handed to her, and literally cried when her first car wasn't the color she wanted. Married rich. Can't fathom why I can't take off work whenever it suits me. And says stuff like I wouldn't ask my boss for a week off. I would tell him I'm taking the week off. I went to a private international school in London as a teenager. Most kids there had parents working good jobs, but in between them were some filthy rich kids with parents in the oil industry or something similar. In 8th grade we were talking about our Easter break and my friend from Belgium was talking about how his family had decided last minute to go there over the break, but had decided to drive there because there were no flights available. Then this Russian billionaire classmate of mine asked him, why don't you take a private jet? She was so clueless when we started laughing. Edit. Grandma. I worked on shifts with a guy 4 years who thought every single person was out to get him. I've never met anyone who had such a warped sense of reality. He would joke on with someone, then go away for the weekend and stew on one particular thing, then come in on Monday absolutely raging over taking something the complete wrong way. I've seen him attack 2 people and heard about a third. Thing is, he's so dopey. Everyone thinks he's harmless and that's just the way he is. A guy I trained as an apprentice has just started on shifts with him. Doesn't take anyone being a stick well at all. I think they'll do well together, haha. Rick Snyder, former governor of Michigan. When the Detroit area was wrecked by massive flooding, and most houses with basements flooded a few feet deep and people lost tons of their stuff, and thousands of cars were written off because of the flooding of the roads, Rick let us all know he understood what it was like because one of his vacation properties, multiple, had a leaky roof one time, and some carpet got wet. My cousin's wife got very sick while we were at a wedding in Mexico because she drank no water, only alcohol. She said, there were ice chips in my drinks, so I thought it was enough. Anyways, she complained because at the hospital some of the staff didn't speak English. You're in a Spanish speaking country. My soul legit believes she's a strong, independent businesswoman who owns 3 major businesses. She does 3 MLM gigs. Edit. Thanks for the silver. The irritating thing is that I actually do have a brick and mortar business that I've been running for 5 years now, and she's always giving me business advice and pushing me to join her for these amazing opportunities. It's so stereotypically obnoxious. OMG hun, I totally understand the grind. Yeah. I bet you do. Oh. All said while wearing brightly horrendous outfits. Caked on macube. And smelling like decaying frankincense. Parents of a 35-year-old woman who was hospitalized after suffering severe anoxic brain damage 20 years ago. She had been in the same ward since. Barely conscious. They refused to get her transferred to a more suitable facility for 20 years, saying that there's no reason to do so. Those facilities are for lost causes, and their daughter is going to make a full recovery, finish school, get married and be totally fine. Working in hospitals got me quite a collection of these stories. But this one I thought was one of the saddest ones. That legislator who said the female body has ways to shut down a pregnancy in the event of a legitimate rape. Work with a girl who is a flat earther, and on top of that, denied the existence of space. When the topic came up, and I disagreed, she asked if I had ever been there. Obviously I haven't. I told her I have also never been to Japan, and that does not mean it doesn't exist. She complained to management about my intolerance of her beliefs. I was a stable hand of a very upper tier barn in a wealthy part of the country. The staff have to sign non-disclosure agreements to protect clients. On one particularly scorching July day, I overheard a client venting to another about how she was incredibly stressed and going to have a mental breakdown because her first choice catering company was all booked up for the weekend of her last-minute yacht party. I'm paycheck to paycheck and had probably a total of 3 days off since Christmas. I would love for a yacht party to be my basis for a mental breakdown. Needless to say, the staff had a healthy chuckle on that one. My girlfriend was traveling in China when she was 18 years old and was once randomly approached by a man claiming to be a scientist performing a medical study on feet. He would need to measure the exact dimensions of her feet. For this, she obviously had to take off her shoes and socks, and he would also need to take some pictures of her feet as well. Years later she tells this story to me and some friends in a bar. At first we start laughing, but then realize she isn't joking and still doesn't realize what had happened there. We actually had to spell it out for her. I'm sure she made some Chinese foot fetishists day. My brother told me I'm avoiding Asian people if I see them on the street or anything. You know, for safety because of the coronavirus. He's Asian. Our entire family is Asian. My mother and several people in my family believe that God marks people. If someone ultimately has a good soul, they're white, and I'm sure you can guess where it goes from there. If only non-white did crafty things, that would make sense, but you don't even have to look at much of the world to see that is not the case. When I try to bring up that tons of white people do awful things, her logic is they're lost souls that will eventually find their way. Meanwhile, she'll believe a non-white will never find their way, even if they act like they have. The level of delusion this takes is one of the most frightening things to me. An ex became really religious, and I'd still talk to her sometimes. Somehow the topic of flat earth theories came up, and she said she thinks it's actually possible that it could be true. I tried to explain that we have more than enough imagery and data indicating that the earth is round. And she said it could all be planted there by Satan. You just can't come up with a response to that. In college I had a roommate from the most sheltered part of Long Island. We met an exchange student from Switzerland, and I swear to God she said this in complete seriousness. Oh wow, I didn't know people actually lived in Switzerland. I thought there were just banks there. There is a girl at my work that always witches about not making enough BC. She makes 200 to 300 a paycheck. Then is always the first to leave early and always shows up late, and has other PPL take her shifts. She asked me how I make 600 to 800 a paycheck. I said BC, I work more. I'm currently at work taking over her shift. She doesn't realize, if you don't work more you'll be paid less. I'm half Native American, of the northern Paiute and Washoe tribes. And whenever I meet new people, they always ask what ethnicity I'm, as I look very ambiguous. And when I say Native, sometimes they say, oh wow, I didn't know Native Americans still existed. Kinda sad. Went on one date with a coworker from a place I worked at in high school. After that date she would message me non-stop. From the moment I woke up till I went to sleep. She said that she had fallen in love with me, and that we were meant to be together. Horny 17-year-old me was still able to see all the flags, and I broke up with her. When I did, she threatened to kill herself, and I had to track down and call her mother's number to try and prevent the girl from killing herself or anything else. I didn't trust any girls, or had a desire for a relationship for a while after that. Browsing Reddit provides me a daily dose of people completely out of touch with reality. I dated this girl who believed her roommates were spying on her. That every time they had friends over, and were hanging out in the common space and laughing, it was because they were spying on her in her room. She also believed the government was spying on her, and her parents directly. Us dating lasted about a week, and ended, not just because the red flags, but because she tried to drop by unannounced after only being on a couple dates. My parents paid for half the down payment on my house, pay for our landscaper, house cleaner, child daycare, car insurance, and give my wife and our monthly allowance. We are completely self-sufficient human beings who even try and give other friends financial advice. Obviously written in the voice of someone I know. The pastor of a small town church insisted that members set up the parish hall and provide food and beverages for 125 people after every Sunday service, even though the average attendance was only around 20 people. Week after week, month after month, much food would be disposed of, and large urns of coffee dumped down the sink, and all because the pastor was in denial about the reality of weekly attendance. Logan Paul thinking that putting up a video of a suicide victim was a good idea to his mostly child to preteen audience. Yeah, I know he apologized, but the guy literally spent time editing the footage before uploading it, thinking it would be good idea. WTF. My mill told me that Pepsi has aborted fetuses in it, and that drinking it will make you gay. As I was drinking a Pepsi. Other highlights from her. She doesn't trust doctors, and says they are all paid off by the government to hide some ominous truth from everyone else. She believes COVID-19 is a hoax, and also believes it comes from 5G. How she believes both of them simultaneously is beyond me. She thinks anxiety and depression are myths, and that church is the only answer. She thinks the only reason people don't like Donald Trump is because he's against abortion, and if it weren't for that, 100% of the populace would adore him. I could go on. Edit. I did go on in the comments below. I had a fat, ugly, unemployed friend who believed he deserved a perfect 10 girlfriend. He only asked out women that were way out of his league. It was so cringy. He truly had no self-awareness. In the club he would walk up to supermodel types and ask them out, and would come back angry when he was always shot down. He eventually moved to Brazil because he was convinced American women were too smug to appreciate his excellence. And the crazy thing was that he wasn't just playing any confidence is sexy game or anything. He 100% believed in this. He saw himself as a god.